to bring to our students the best minds in entrepreneurship, to make sure that the journey of entrepreneurship for them is going to be one full of knowledge and full of motivation. And today is one such session which promises to bring to you a very, very clear vision of what entrepreneurship is all about. But before we begin, please allow me to share with you a very, very short video clip from the man himself, from the personality who started the Sahas initiative, our chief mentor and chairman of IIHM, Dr. Subarna Bose. So here goes a very short video clip.
Sahas. Sahas means courage. And at IIHM, it's always been students first. Sahas is one of the biggest initiative that IIHM has ever taken. Sahas is a huge commitment from all of us at IIHM to make sure that our students gets all the mentorship, the guidance, and the education to become the entrepreneurs of tomorrow. Because what IIHM stands for is to create not just a global hospitality professional, but to create global hospitality entrepreneur. And when we created the Sahas, our entrepreneurship initiative and our entrepreneurship cell, the intention was not just to mentor, guide, and handhold the student, but also to give some funding for the students. And for this, we have got a corpus fund of 5 crore rupees, which would be given to the student as a seed money, but we are scaling it up to 25 crores. Yes, 25 crore for the students of IIHM, so that we can actually help them with some initial seed funding. All the best to everybody. We all really feel that Sahas will be one of the biggest thing that has happened in IIHM ever since IIHM was created. So great time to start off. I think the COVID-19 had really opened this Sahas in a big way. So come on everybody and join this Sahas movement. And that's Subarna Bose. I am the person who is leading Sahas for a top, so I need the blessings from all of the investors to come and help our students. Namaskar.
Fantastic. So that was Dr. Subarna Bose, and as he says, Sahas is courage and Sahas is a promise that we are surely going to keep. Before we begin the session, I would now like to invite our director, IIHM Kolkata, Mrs. Sanjukta Bose, to kindly welcome our guest speaker and introduce him. Over to you, Ma'am Bose.
Good evening, everyone. A very warm welcome to all our students present here. And of course, Pan-India team members, IIHM, who are present here today for the Sahas session with Professor Chandradeep Mitra, Professor C.D. Mitra. To talk about Professor C.D. Mitra, Professor Chandradeep Mitra, founder of CEO People Magic and co-founder Meta Site, advisor and mentor IIM Calcutta Innovation Park, visiting Professor of Marketing IIM Calcutta, Accelerate Micah. Professor Chandradeep Mitra is a well-known professor of marketing and innovation, certified leadership and transition coach, advisor and mentor for MNCs, family businesses, startups and social enterprises, corporate master trainer and branding innovation consultant. Professor Mitra finished his schooling at St. Xavier's, Kolkata, graduated in engineering from IIT Kharagpur, and did his MBA from IIM Kolkata. In a stellar corporate career as a marketing and communication expert, spanning 2 decades, Chandradeep headed regional and Indian operations of branding, communication, and media consultancies in global companies like Loewe, Linkers, O&M, DTB Mudra, and advised many leading global Indian companies. In 2009, he quit as president of Mudra Max and set up two boutique consultancy and training companies. As a well-known visiting adjunct professor, CD has been designing and delivering over a dozen cutting-edge marketing and innovation courses for over a decade at four of India's leading business schools, IIM Kolkata, Accelerate, Jipmer, and Micah. He also conducts several MDPs and online courses and is often invited as a guest faculty at other leading business schools. As an entrepreneurship and social enterprise evangelist at CD was instrumental in creating IIM Kolkata Innovation Park and has been its advisor and mentor since 2014. He has worked closely with central and state government in fostering grassroots level entrepreneurship. He is a charter member, executive committee member, and ex-honorary secretary of the Kolkata chapter of TIE, the leading global organization for fostering entrepreneurship. We are very lucky to have you with us, Professor Mitra. Over to you, Professor Mitra.
Thank you, Smita. Thank you, Professor Bose. It's a matter of great pleasure. This is the first time I'm interacting with the IIHM community, and maybe it won't be the last time because Dr. Suborna Bose has asked me to be, perhaps in some capacity, get involved with the Sahas initiative. And my first reaction was, oh my God, I have already so much on my plate. But my second reaction was that I think it's a great initiative for an educational institution to actually actively encourage its students to look at entrepreneurship as a career option. And I think a lot of people talk about it, but I think it seems to me that in the last few months, IIHM has started really walking the talk. One is by creating this initiative called Sahas and getting a lot of people roped in. Also, as we say in business, putting your money where your mouth is. So the fact that you put together a corpus, it's a great idea. And I know that the corpus is now getting enhanced, so that's even better. Something that we have to keep in mind at the backdrop of all of this is that this is a very tough time for all of us, right? And the truth is, we are encouraging young students to kind of who are just beginning their careers to think of alternate career options, look at being job creators, not job seekers. But the truth is, most of us, and a lot of us here I can see are much older. You must be the directors and the faculty of IIHM. The truth is, most of us haven't probably quite seen something like COVID and the impact it has had in multiple sectors of society, not just in business, but health and people's sentiments and people's consumption patterns, everything. And the other truth is, apart from the overall chaos that COVID has caused, and the story isn't over and we don't know when it will get over. One of the industries which is very badly impacted, apart from travel and tourism, is hospitality, F&B, which is the business that all of you are actively involved in, right? And you probably know a lot more about the industry than I do. So we need, I think, two things. One is we obviously, especially students who pass out of any kind of management institute, whether it's a hotel management institute or a normal MBA or whatever, we've been conditioned by society to believe that, we get a good degree and we'll pass out and we'll get a good job. And by and large, especially if you've been a good student in a good institute, that has been true. But what was by and large true for the last 20, 30, 40 years, and what is happening in 2020 is completely two different scenarios, right? I'm sure it applies a lot to hospitality and F&B and everything. But I can assure you, every sector, because I teach in some of the best MBA institutes, I know in every sector it's looking quite tough, and a lot of students who have been waiting to pass out and get a job or already been placed in companies are now finding that either their placements have got deferred or it seems to be uncertain because they've been told that as of now, we'll not take you, we'll come back after 3 months, 6 months. A few have luckily started working and working from home, but that doesn't work too well in the F&B industry. So the whole question arises, what are they going to do with their careers, right? In this context, I think there are two things that we have to keep in mind. If it's not going to be easy to get jobs, and I think that reality is not going to change even a year from now, then it's important that rather than waiting for somebody to give you a job, if you can figure out, and of course it's not easy, but if you can figure out how you can be at the very least self-employed to begin with, where you can take care of yourself, but then you move ahead to a situation where maybe to begin with you can start helping a few other people, and that few other could be 3 people, 5 people, 10 people, 20 people. You can give jobs to other people. I think that's a great situation to be in, both personally because you're not dependent on somebody else who give you a job today and take away a job tomorrow. And we can see in many industries, people who have jobs are also losing jobs. So you are much more, the control switch is in your own hands. Of course, it's not easy, but at least you're not dependent on somebody else. And even better, ideally, if you're in a situation that you can provide job to a few other people, then you are doing a great service to society. And I think, unfortunately, in India, most institutes and most students who pass out of any kind of specialized course, professional course, we've been used to thinking that there will be a job ready to be, ready for us by the time we finish a course. I'm an MBA, and when I passed out, that is the thinking that I had. And it took me a very long time to get out of, and free myself from this feeling. And most of us come from middle class backgrounds. Our societies, our families have told us from our childhood, don't worry, get a good education, go to a good institute, there'll be a job and you'll be taking care of life. But the way life is increasingly, and especially after COVID, that kind of certainty, that kind of thing doesn't exist anymore, right? So I think taking the control switch back in your own hand is both scary, but also empowering. And to be able to help others and provide employment to others is even better. But to be able to do that, the next point that you have to keep in mind is that you have to be fairly innovative. And today in every industry, and especially in F&B industry, it's not easy to be able to just start any business and assume that you'll be successful. I mean, if you wanted to start a hotel today or start a restaurant today, where would the customers be? How would they come? So then you have to think differently. Do you want to start a cloud kitchen? Do you want to be a chef on hire? Do you want to do something else? So you have to start thinking innovative, right? So what I'm going to do today is, rather than, and I know that we've already, 15, 20 minutes into the session, and I think we have about 40 minutes left. And I do want to keep about maybe, if possible, 10, 15 minutes at the end for some kind of Q&A or interaction. And I would be happy to take questions and do my best to answer the best I can. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through actually a presentation that I had put together, I realized some time back, for another bunch of professionals. And these were actually practicing doctors who wanted to start their own business. And I felt that what I had shared with them was kind of appropriate. So I've tweaked it a bit, but I'm going to take the liberty of, I know I'm a teacher, so rather than just talk, sometimes I like sharing a presentation. So Smita or Professor Bose, I hope that's okay if I kind of share a screen and take you through a quick presentation. Is that okay?
Absolutely. Absolutely, Professor Mitra.
Okay, so I'm going to share the screen now, and I'm going to take you through. It's going to really help me talk through what I want to talk about. And it's really about how do you start your own business, and what are the first steps you need to take to start up your own business. So let me see if the screen comes up. Is the screen visible?
Yes.
Yes, sir. It's just starting. It's starting to share.
Yeah. So let me just make it full screen. Give me a second.
Yes, sir. It's there.
So it's a short presentation, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly run through it. Ideally, I would have not minded if there were questions in between, but since it's a short one, let me just quickly run through it, and then I can take questions and get into interactions or whatever, right? So it's very simple. I call it startup, the first steps to starting your own business, right? And I understand that some of you are already thinking of starting your own business, the students who are here. Has anyone already started? Or are they in the process of putting their plans together?
Professor Mitra, there are most of the students are in the process of putting the plan together, but there are few who have started very, very small, on a very small scale.
Great. So in a way, this is probably the perfect time to kind of address some of the questions that will come up. So this is really meant for people who have either just started or are actively thinking of starting their business in the near future, right? So the question, and if I was in a interactive session face to face, I would have spent some time asking people question. What are some of the first steps, and are there any right steps? Is there a definite formula, or is there like to trial and error? And what do you think should be the right step? How do you plan? So I'm going to give you my perspective, and there's no, it's not like absolutely scientific that this is the only formula. So there is no one set of golden rules, and that's something we have to keep in mind. By now, I have had the fortune of meeting and interacting with a lot of successful entrepreneurs, and everybody has his own kind of success formula, and they've gone about their own ways. But then some of them have also made some mistakes, and I think the trick is to learn from the mistakes and to come to something which is at least has a reasonably better chance of success. So I'm going to share that with you, right? So while there is not one single golden rule or whatever, or set of rules, there are some broad principles, and I'm going to touch upon them, right? And I call them the 11 P's of starting up, right? I like alliteration. It helps me remember things, and hopefully it's also something that's going to be useful for some of the students here, right? So I call it also the P team, and P stands for performance, right? So how do you have a dream, but how do you make that dream come alive, and how do you make it successful? How do you perform, right? So that's what I'm going to talk about. So the first thing that you have to keep in mind is you have to start with a purpose, right? And what is a purpose? A purpose is it's the why of what you do. It's not the what. A lot of people saying that I want to start a business because I want to make money or be successful, but that's not a purpose. That's always an outcome. That's a side effect. The purpose is, the guy who started Airbnb. His purpose was to actually let people be able to, not have a typical traditional hotel experience and be able to live in people's houses and enjoy the local culture, but also allow people who had spare capacity in their homes to be able to monetize it, right? Like a win-win. So the purpose was to create a double win situation where people had spare rooms, spare capacity, and they could monetize it, they could make money out of it, but they could also get to know new people. While people who were travelers, who were tired of staying in typical hotels, they could get a lot more authentic feel of a place and interact with the local people, be like a almost quasi house guest or somebody. So that was the purpose. So it starts with an idea, right? So without a strong purpose, typically you won't go far. Does that mean a purpose is the automatically gives you success? No, it doesn't. You have a lot of other things that you have to put in place. But the purpose is important because, among other things, unless you have a strong sense of purpose, unless you have a big why, and there's a very famous talk which was given by Simon Sinek, and those of you interested, you can check out. It's a TED talk by Simon Sinek, and it's called the Golden Circle, where he says at the center of everything that we do should not be the what or the how, it should be the why. Why do we do it? Because if you're very clear about the why, the route might change. It's a little like saying, this was being asked of George Mallory, the first person who tried to climb Mount Everest. Why? And he said, because it exists. Right? For him, it was a very strong purpose. He wanted to get on top of the tallest, tallest mountain on earth, right? So if you don't have that strong commitment, if you don't have a strong purpose, invariably, because being an entrepreneur is tough at any point of time. Post-COVID, I can assure you, being an entrepreneur is probably 5 times or 10 times tougher. So unless you have that purpose, unless you're driven from inside, it's not going to be easy for anybody to keep going at a time when, it almost feel like giving up. And I've been an entrepreneur myself, and I know many, many entrepreneurs. I've had the good fortune of meeting literally hundreds of entrepreneurs. There will be times that you will feel that nothing is working. You've tried 3 things, 5 things, but it's the purpose. It's that very deep, strong commitment of resilience, of not giving up, that keeps you going, that makes you not give up when almost anybody else is willing to give up. So unless you have a very strong commitment and purpose, I think it's very difficult to be an entrepreneur. You must know deep within your heart why you're doing what you're doing, right? So what are we trying to achieve? Why are we really doing this? And it's, as I said, it's almost never about making money or becoming rich and famous. That is always, if you become successful, and that typically happens, it takes time for that to happen, and doesn't happen to everyone, and definitely doesn't happen overnight. But during that journey, it's a purpose that keeps you going, right? That's something that keeps you awake at night, that makes you can't let go of that dream. Even if you work late one day after the next day after next day, you still wake up with a bounce and you're still charged up and excited. That's what purpose does to you, right? So every time, you have to do something worthwhile, you have to sacrifice things. So sometimes you sacrifice your personal life. Sometimes when your friends and other people are maybe making more money in a regular job and you're struggling as an entrepreneur, it's a purpose that keeps you going, because you're willing to make sacrifices in the short run, in the medium run, if necessary, even in the long run, because the purpose is something that is truly worthwhile, right? So that is really so you have to find your purpose. You have to find something that really means a lot, that comes straight from within your heart, and nobody else on earth can tell you what your purpose is, right? It cannot be injected from outside. Nobody else can say, hey, here's a great idea, why didn't you do it? Unless you feel it. Of course, you may get an idea from outside, but unless you feel very strongly about it, unless you feel very passionate about it, which means not that you get excited today, but tomorrow or after 1 week, you are not so sure. It means that you are excited today, you will be excited 1 month later, you will be excited 1 year later, even if it's tough. It also means that there is a broad direction. It doesn't mean there's something very specific. It means you have a broad direction in mind and you're willing to change some of that course, but as long as it's like climbing a mountain. If one road, stops or there's a landslide, you will find another road to get there. So you have that broad direction and the broad goal in mind, but in between what happens, what path you have to take, what do you have to do next month or next week or next year, those plans may have to change. And in new business terminology, we call it pivoting. You often have to pivot. You often have to change plans because something you try doesn't work. You have to try something else. You have to be flexible. You have to be adaptive. But the purpose doesn't go away, because purpose is something which is overarching and that keeps you going. Okay. After defining the purpose is not something that stands in isolation. Invariably, any business exists because there are a bunch of customers who are willing to get the product or service that you want to offer and are willing to pay money for it, right? Now, these are what I call prospect. Now, normally I would say customers, but when you're starting a business, they are not already your customers, right? They are what I call prospects. They could become, or hopefully will become one day, your customers. And to begin with, if there are 100 such people, to begin with, first 1, then 3, then 5, then 7, one by one, people will slowly start coming on. And if you give them a great product, if you give them a great service, if you give them a great experience, chances are they will become repeat customers. Chances are they will become what I call brand advocate, because they are so happy with you. They will tell their friends, they will tell other people, and slowly the word will spread. And that is how you will gain more customers. But you start with prospect, which means in your mind, you have a set of people. You have a description of the kind of person who is most likely to consume or buy or use your product or service, whatever that it is, that business idea that you have, right? And that initially you don't have a sharp idea, you have a broad purpose, you have a broad direction in mind. Then you're saying, who is it whose problem that I'm trying to solve? Who is it who I want to serve, right? And understand them. And this is very important because you have to understand who they are. You have to understand what are their pain points. You have to understand what are they currently doing, because today they must be solving their problem in some other way. Now, if you've come up with a different new solution, how do you know whether they will feel that it's a better solution? Because if they are not convinced it's a better solution, chances are you're not going to succeed. So you must really know your customers in depth. By that, you may have to do research, you may have to observe them, you may have to talk to them, you have to find out as much. You have to almost be able to second guess how they live their lives, what are they looking for, what really makes them happy, what makes them unhappy, what are their pain points. You really have to enter their lives and really start empathizing with them, right? As they say, empathy is about putting yourself in someone else's shoes. But to be able to do that, first you have to take off your own shoes, which means you cannot think of yours like yourself. You have to think like your customer. Because only when you start thinking like your customer will you know whether whatever you want to do or whatever you want to offer, whether the customer is going to feel adequately excited about wanting to try it or buy it or whatever, right? So you need to identify and truly understand your prospects, right? Who are the people? What do you know about them? And if you don't know enough, find out. You know, there are ways of getting secondary research. You can do primary research. You can go and talk to people. You can appoint a research agency. You get some friends to talk to them on your behalf, whatever. So who is the consumer? And very often in a lot of businesses, we must also understand that there are different people involved, right? The person who consumes your product may not be the person who pays for it, right? May not be the decision maker. There may be other people who are influencers. So there are multiple sets of people who are involved in the final decision making and the consumption process. And you have to identify all of them. It's a little like saying, if you want to sell a cold drink to or chips to a child, you have to make it attractive to a child, but you also have to convince the father or the mother who's going to pay the money. So very often the buyer or the decider is not the consumer, right? So you have to understand. And then there may be an influencer. There could be a doctor. There could be health specialists, right? There can be business, food bloggers are influencers who shape people's choices and decisions. So you must know what is the entire decision-making process, right? Not just your customer, but everybody else around them who plays a role in that decision-making process, right? And what is that need of theirs that you're trying to fulfill? And how exactly are they fulfilling their need today? Because today they are carrying on with their lives, and you have to figure out what is their current way of thinking and working and doing things. And then you have to figure out what you're going to do, which is going to make a difference, and how is it a positive difference, and whether they're going to be excited. So based on understanding the prospect and the problem or the gap, what we call in marketing the need gap that exists, which means ideally they would like something, but they're not getting it. That is when you come in. That is when you have your product ready. The product means not something necessarily physical or tangible, especially in your business. It's often intangible. It's a service. It's an experience, but that's a product. A product in marketing terms means anything that a consumer buys and consumes, that is a product, right? So basically, you have to then formulate the product, and the formulation of the product, the designing of the product, the creation of the product, the ideation of the product comes from understanding who is my consumer and what problem of his or her am I solving? Where is the gap currently in their life where they are going to feel sufficiently motivated to saying, what you are giving is sufficiently better, right? So what is the core idea? What is the problem you're trying to solve? How are you solving it? What are the features? What are the benefits? What is the value proposition, right? How do you position it? Do you position it as something, for example, if it's a food, do you position it as a healthy alternative to what they're doing? Is it something which is tastier? Is it something that is faster? So look at restaurant. We used to have fine dining restaurant, and the whole QSRs came about, and their value proposition wasn't necessarily the fact that they were healthier food or even tastier food, but because they were faster. And at that point of time, getting quick food was something that fitted into people's busy lifestyles, right? Where you can order and go. When Domino's came to India and they promised, 30-minute or else your money back, that was the value proposition. The fact that they were, of course, talking about, good food, good pizzas. I mean, between us, we know Domino's pizzas are not necessarily the best pizzas in the world, but at least it's very convenient. It's affordable, and more importantly, you get it very fast. So that was the proposition. When you're feeling hungry, you don't want to wait. You want to get it right now. And even if you're sitting at home, within 30 minutes, they'll deliver. So that was their proposition, right? So how do you position it? Do you position it as, if it's food, is it tasty? Is it healthy? Is it something that is unique? Is it what is that special? What is that thing? Now, remember, a position has to be what is called relevant, differentiated, and credible. What does the three things mean? Relevant means it has to be something that people need. You can't tell people that I'm going to give you something and people say, but I don't need that, right? So that, loses the first plot in terms of relevance. Differentiated means that what you're offering, if 50 other people are already offering, then the question arises that why should they buy it from you? So you have to be differentiated. Either you have to be better or faster or cheaper, or you have to be the only one who can offer it. In some ways, you have to be different from others, because if you give exactly what everybody else offers, then you'll get lost in the crowd. And why would somebody buy from you, especially if you're a newcomer? Then why should people try that? And the third thing, which is important from newcomers and startup businesses, you have to have credibility, which is the question that, why should I trust you? Even if you say that you're tastier or you're healthier, I've never tried you, or you're faster. How would I trust you, especially if you're a new business, right? So that is where things like customer testimonials or money back guarantee, and those are kind of ways that you want to win over or gain trust from people, so that people will be able to saying that the promise that you're making, you will be able to fulfill it. And there is enough proof, or there is enough assurance that you're not going to cheat them, or what you promise and what you deliver, there won't be a gap, right? So you have to have a position which is relevant, differentiated, and credible. And based on that, you start your whole business idea, right? And sometimes it's not just one, especially in F&B. It's like a whole portfolio of products and services, right? So are you a fine dining restaurant which gives are you a multi-cuisine restaurant? Do you only offer Chinese? Do you offer Asian food? Do you offer continental food? So what is that entire portfolio that you have in offer, right? Or are you only selling burgers, right? So you have to be very clear what are you selling, and it's not just necessarily one product, but it's like a suite of products. It's sort of, but they're tied together with some kind of common theme, and that becomes your core competence, right? Also, one important thing is how are you going to price your products? Now, sometimes pricing is a differentiator, right? One of the ways that McDonald's made themselves accessible was the fact that they were very cheap, or a lot of other brands have often talked about the fact that, you get the same quality, but at a lower price, right? So is it, or sometimes if you're a fine dining restaurant, you have a price quality equation, which basically means that, yes, we know we are expensive, but it gives you a fantastic experience, right? And so we are very much worth the money that you pay. And especially in a lot of luxury categories, people actually think something that costs more probably is of a better quality, right? Not always necessarily so, but sometimes so. So you have to decide at what price point are you going to sell your product. One is it has to be acceptable and attractive to consumers, but also remember, you have to also make money. So the pricing has to keep both of these things in mind. You then look for potential. Now, what does potential means? Is there an untapped or a latent need? This is where I said, what is the pain point? What is the need gap? Everything that you're offering, is it something that is already being fulfilled? Because then you don't have consumer doesn't have a need to buy it from you. But the potential arises only when you're giving something which is somewhat unique or somewhat differentiated or somewhat, it's based on what people need, but no one has quite given that to it yet, to them in that form yet, right? So there is an untapped or a latent need where consumers saying, wow, how did you guess this is something that I want? How do you know that if I had that, I'd be happy, right? And what is the scope and size of that opportunity? Because it also has to be ideally a scalable opportunity, ideally something that you should be able to make enough money. If you find only 3 people in a city are willing to buy your product, then you will not be able to make a business out of that, right? You need enough number of people. So even if it's a niche or a gourmet product, there still have to be enough number of people who buy your product for your business to be viable, right? And how do you check this? How do you do some research? Do you start in a small way? Do you do a pilot? When it comes to food, I know people have sometimes experimented. They've taken a shop in shop, they've taken a food truck, and they've experimented. And they found that now I'm convinced that there are enough people who are interested in this product at this price. Now I'm willing to scale it up. Or I start with one restaurant and it's working. Now I'm willing to scale it up either my own restaurants or by franchising or whatever, right? So you have to have that, what is called a validate. This is called customer validation. You have an idea, you do some research, but after that you have to try it out at a small scale, which doesn't take too much of time and effort and money, but it gives you that confidence of saying, this is an idea which not only that I'm excited about, it fits in with my purpose, but even customers are getting excited. And I think this is going to work, right? So you have to validate your assumptions. You have to get what is called customer validation. And you have to also remember your competition is not going to keep quiet. If you have stumbled on a good idea, they're also going to try to compete with you or imitate you or cut you down on price. And maybe they have deeper pockets. So you have to have a strategy in mind how you're going to fight or compete, right? Sometimes you do it with branding. Sometimes you have, literally, in your case, the secret sauce. So for example, KFC had talked about that secret formula that Colonel Sanders had that gave them that magic flavor that no one else had. So what is that one thing that competition can't that easily catch up? Coca-Cola says that they have a flavor that only 3 people in the world know, right? The formula of Coca-Cola. And they make a big deal out of that no one else can make a cola. They can make a cola. You may like it, you may not like it. The formula of Coca-Cola is kept in a vault in Atlanta and only 3 people have access to it. It's like a big secret, right? So you have to anticipate competition and you have to protect it. The protect is your brand name. You have to protect it by things like trademarking, but your reputation you have to protect. There are other ways of protecting your business, because if you're successful, if you're not successful, then anyway, bad luck. But if you're successful, then your competition is going to also try to fight against you and you have to be able to protect yourself, right? Based on all of these, you start putting together a plan. Now, there's something called a business plan, and I'm not going to get into length. That is, I'm sure either somebody's already done it or hopefully somebody else will. What is a business plan and what are the 8 or 10 things that a business plan should cover? But some of them I've already talked about here. But this is where you start putting things like some numbers and some timelines together, right? Till now, it's more like an idea. It's more a trial and error. So you have to write down a business plan. You have to do some forecasting. And these are guesses. These are educated guesses, and the guesses may or may not turn out, which means it's like as you keep trying, you keep changing your plan. You keep fine-tuning your plan and updating your plan. So you do some forecasting, you do some scenario planning. If things go well, then This is how I'll expand. If they don't, then I'm going to pivot, then I'm going to try something else, whatever it is. But you have to have that plan ready and ideally think about it and write it down. And this is where if you get a mentor or somebody you can bounce off your ideas, this is where you should get some sanity check done, right? You need to plan for all your costs, your revenues, your funding requirements. Have you thought about it? Are you going to start a restaurant? Are you going to start a hotel? Are you going to start a frozen food business? How much will it cost? Have you factored in all the possible costs? Is there a, have you factored in if your sales go up, how much will you earn? If they don't go up, there are still some. What are your fixed costs? What are your variable costs? You have to start putting all of these together, right? You need to pin down deliverables and timelines, and you have to set yourself some goals and targets, and you have to review yourself based on those goals and targets. And I can tell you something, in my experience, whatever plan you make, especially if it's a startup and it's early stages, never will your plan exactly match. Never will the actual exactly match what you plan. But it doesn't matter. It's still important to make a plan because you just get better. The first time you may be way off the mark. The second time you'll be a little closer. By the 5th, the 7th, the 10th time, you start anticipating all the things that can go right and wrong, and you start becoming better at planning. So planning is not a one-off exercise. It's an iterative process. You keep making plans, you keep reviewing and saying what went right, what went wrong, what can I learn? How can I make a better plan? So you make almost monthly plans, and every month you review and saying, was I off target? How much? What went wrong? What did I not calculate? So next month I must build that in. Again, something else goes wrong, you build that in. So by the 5th or 10th month, you're saying now I'm beginning to get my planning ability is becoming better. And now I'm being able to forecast better. So you have to go through an iterative practice before you become good at doing that, right? One of the important things you have to keep in mind in any business, and definitely in F&B kind of business or any kind of food business or hospitality business, and even more so now with COVID, with social distancing norms, hygiene norms, all of that, there are going to be a lot of protocols and compliance, right? There are a whole lot of government authorities whose rules you have to follow, and it's important that you know the rules. And the best thing to do is to talk to other people who have set up such businesses. You have experts. Being part of the IIHM community will give you access to those kind of. So what are the rules? What are the protocols? What are the guidelines? What are the checklists? And different states sometimes have different rules, so you need to know that. One of the things is, of course, sooner or later, you can't run it alone. You have to form a company. There are different forms of company. There's a limited liability partnership. There's a private limited company. At what stage, what kind of company should you form? If you want funding, you need to have a particular structure of a company. All this is important. You have to think of a name of the company, but also the brand name that you're going to sell. You have to own it. You have to register it. You have to trademark it. The company has to be registered. You have to incorporate that company. You have to have the structure. You have to have ownership. Who owns the company? Is it 2 partners, 3 partners? Is it private limited? Is it a LLP? Or you're a sole proprietor? You have to think of the structure. You may start as a sole proprietor, but saying that if business goes well, within 6 months, 1 year, I'll make it into LLP or I'll make it into private limited, right? So you have to have that plan in place, right? There are a lot of protocols and compliances. And as I said, in your business, in the kind of businesses most of you will be, there are a lot of government rules and regulations that you need to be aware of. You will have experts, you'll have mentors, you'll have legal advisors. I'm sure IIHM can help arrange for a lot of them. So these are things that you have to be aware of. Every industry has its own set of rules and protocols, and it's very important. You don't want to be on the wrong side of the law. You don't want an inspector to come, a food inspector or the fire inspector or somebody to come and suddenly, seal your establishment or whatever. So you need to know what the rules are and make sure that you've complied with all of that, right? From tax registration, trademark, clearances, bank account, everything. Now, by the time you're doing this, hopefully you're not operating alone and you have started putting together a team of people. And in fact, the biggest success factor of the success of any business is the quality of people. And you realize, especially if you want to build a business, you can almost never, however good and smart and hardworking you are, you can never do it alone. So you have to have a good bunch of people. Now, some of them may come in as partners who are co-owners. Some of them may come in as employees. You may even take advisors or mentors on board, right? But it's a combination of people. You have to create a people ecosystem which is going to do it. You need some good planners, you need good executors, and sometimes you have partners, co-founders. You find somebody is good at operations, somebody is good at finance, somebody is good at system. So you have to have complementary skills. You have to keep all of that in mind. Getting the right people can make or break your business. In fact, if there's one thing that is probably the most important thing, everything else can be changed. But if you don't get if you start with the wrong set of people, then it's very difficult to build a strong, good business, right? And choose for talent, capability, skill, and attitude, right? Which means if they have the right attitude, if they're the right talent, that's the right kind of. Don't only look for qualification or don't only look for whatever, but are they the right people? And do they have complementary skills? Do you have the right chemistry in working with them, right? Also decide the terms of engagement and remuneration. Are you going to be equal partners? Are you going to be a majority partner, somebody else's minority partner? How much stake are you going to give? And if you're not very sure, take help from an advisor, from a mentor, and be fair. If you're not fair to the people you're working with, sooner or later, they're going to lose motivation and your business is going to suffer. Be fair. Don't get cheated. That's the other extreme. But don't be too smart and try to deprive of your core team of what is due to them. If you're fair to them, they're going to be through thick and thin and they're going to feel sufficiently motivated. And together as a team, you will be able to succeed, right? And you have to, that is how the culture of an organization gets created. The initial set of people, the founders, the first set of employees, they help create a culture. And some of the greatest companies are companies who have a great culture, who have a great sense of belonging and bonding. And that's why they've been able to survive even when they went through business ups and downs. You need good team spirit, you need camaraderie, you need a very solid work ethic. That's very important. If you don't see eye to eye with your co-founders or your employees, you have very different mindset or different ways of working, then it's not going to be easy for this entire team to be able to work together, right? And as I said, apart from your employees and co-founders, you need the right set of mentors and advisors on board. In fact, for a startup, getting good mentors is probably one of the best things you can do, right? Because they can constantly, they are your like voice of conscience. They can criticize you, they can guide you, they can tell you on your face what is right or wrong. And it's not always that you have to blindly follow everything that the mentors say, but they come in with a lot of experience and value, and they don't have an immediate stake. So listen to them carefully and seriously. Finally, you should do what you feel is right, but give a lot of credence and importance to what mentors say, because more often than not, mentors add a lot of value, right? But of course, if you get the wrong mentors, then you're not going to be able to get advantage of that. This is where you also have to look at partnerships, right? Now, partnerships could be people who bring in funds. Partnerships could be co-founders. Partnerships could be franchisees, whatever, right? So we work in ecosystems. You don't work in isolation. Choosing the right partner, it could be suppliers, people who give you the raw material, people who you hire your premises from, your agents, everything. You need the right set of partners, and having, again, apart from good people, getting the good partners is hugely beneficial, right? They can also provide leads, they can provide credibility, they can give you differentiation, they can sometimes give you cost advantage if you source from a good partner, or good quality because you're sourcing from a good partner, all of that, right? And you need to use all your contacts. One of the important things about being a good entrepreneur, irrespective of whether you are a shy person or an introvert or a timid person, when you're doing business, to be able to do a good business, you should be, I use the word consciously, shameless. You know that you're doing something worthwhile and right. Go out and ask people, ask for help. Go out and meet people, reach out and saying, okay, I'm doing this. Is there some way we can collaborate? Is there something we can do? And not everything needs to fructify in a partnership immediately. Think about it, deliberate, discuss, negotiate, all that. But reach out. You need to reach out. To be a good, successful business person, you need to reach out to a lot of people and to get even, some good co-founders, some good mentors, let's say even 3 or 5. You may have needed to talk to 20 people, 30 people, 50 people, till you find the right people who you think can give you the right support, the right advice, the right material, all of that, right? And you use all your informal and formal channels of contact. Use your community, use LinkedIn, use your IIHM community. all of that. And before you get into formal kind of agreement, think through, right? Take help from mentors, take help from advisors. Is it fair? Is it right? Is it, going to work for both of us? All of that. This is where you also look at the financials. I call in the pains and payouts. The financial planning is crucial. You can't spend too much money because then you'll go bankrupt. But also you have to fund it enough for it to succeed. So most businesses fail due to issue on funding or cash flows. So you have to calculate your costs, your revenues, your fund requirements. Sometimes it's working capital, especially in F&B and hotel business. One of the biggest problems is working capital. You are going to get money, but the money is going to come in after some time. And meanwhile, how do you buy your raw material? How do you fund your, the interim period? So that becomes, working capital becomes critical, right? So you have to also plan for contingencies. Today, a lot of businesses, especially startups, are actually failing because they didn't have what is called sufficient runway. They were making enough money every month, but that money was going into paying salaries and rents. And now, thanks to COVID, suddenly their revenues have gone down. They've crashed by 50, 60, 80%, but they still have to pay their salaries. They still have to pay their rents. And suddenly they have, after 1 or 2 months, they don't have money left. So those are companies which have a runway of 3 months, 6 months are probably the ones who are being able to survive. The others are dying out, right? So you have to have backups. You have to have contingencies, some extra fund which is left for a rainy day, all of that, right? You also need to know where you're going to get funds from. Initially, for example, in a startup, it's not easy to get bank loan. So you have to probably, bootstrap or fund it yourself with your friends, with your family. But also, at what stage can you get investors? If you get investors very early, then they unfortunately take away too much of stake. If you get too late, then you have not grown fast enough. This is where I think, IIHM promising or willing to contribute that initial corpus, which can be used as a seed fund, is a great idea. It can help kickstart. You may have a great idea, you may have a prototype, but to put it into action, you need at least some funding, and that's not something maybe you can arrange on your own. So that's where seed funding and angel investors come in very useful. And I think Sahas putting in that initial corpus is probably going to be, for those of you who can access it, is probably going to be very useful. Now, no business can succeed without promotion. By promotion, I mean marketing. When you're starting a new business, nobody knows you. You may have a great product. You may have a great service, great experience, but you didn't exist yesterday and you're unknown. So how do you get the word out? And this is where you have to be smart. You can't afford to come out with big ads because they're very expensive. Can you use social media? Can you use word of mouth? Can you use your friends and neighbors and relatives? Can you use satisfied customers who recommend you to their friends, right? What can you do? Can you get customers to come back and give repeat business to you? So this is where you have to make sure that the word starts spreading and you start becoming a name that more and more people get to know of, right? So it takes a lot of time and effort so anything new to get known, because it's a very crowded world out there and people don't have the time or energy to get to know new things. And you have to plan and invest in building awareness. I know a lot of businesses, a lot of great product, which failed simply because not enough people knew about it. Few people knew and they swore by it. They thought it was great. But unfortunately, those few people were not enough to sustain the business. So you need enough people, and that word has to spread. More and more people need to know about your business and how good you are and what you're good at, right? It needs time, effort, and cost effective. As I said, you can't blow up lots of money in bringing out full page ads. You don't have the money as a startup. So what are the smart ways? Using social media, using word of mouth, you can get the word across, right? And this is where you use combination of media. You need to have a good website, need to have good social media presence. You need to use what is called content marketing, right? Get food bloggers to talk about it. Maybe TripAdvisor to rate you well, whatever, right? So this is where social media becomes very useful and cost effective if you know how to use it. And since I assume most of you are pretty young, you're probably already fairly familiar with social media. And if not, you have to master the tricks, right? Then, of course, you have to take stock once in a month initially, then once in 3 months. This is called periodic reviews. You have to keep monitoring progress. What is working? What is not working? What can I learn? How do we adapt? What plans do we need to change? And this is where mentors, advisors, everyone also, bring them in, take their inputs and use your judgment. You filter your opinions, form your own opinion, but listen to everybody, right? And you have to keep revising the plans. As I said, you can't start in this one. Entrepreneurship is not a straight line. It's like many, many zigzags, and you have to keep making new plans and changing plans. But your broad direction, your broad goal, that purpose will hopefully remain the same, right? Now, this is 11 P's, if you notice how many said. So I call it the playing 11, but every good team also has reserves. And among other things, it's a lot of attitude. It's passion, it's perseverance, it's positivity, and it's a pragmatism. You have to be very practical. You have to know when something is not working, when you have to make changes. You can't be pig-headed. You can't keep on doing the same mistake again and again simply because you think it's your brainchild. You have to not have a very big ego. You have to have a lot of passion, but a small ego. You learn quickly, adapt. That is how you move ahead, right? So passion gets us going. Perseverance makes sure that you don't give up. Positivity, helps you bounce back, especially when you have periodic failures or, setbacks. And pragmatism tells us when you have to change course and how. So if this is what you have, I call them the 11 P's with a reserve of some attitudinal aspects. This is what I think is a winning team. And if you have a winning team, as we know in any game, it doesn't matter whether an individual player is good, but all the team has to work well together. They have to gel together. And this is the winning team of succeeding as a startup, right? And if you're ready and you have to get this entire winning team in place, that is when you're ready to the game to begin, and hopefully you will be successful. Okay. So I think we are just about on time, and if you want, I'm willing to take maybe question answer for now 5-10 minutes, if that's okay. And I think then we are good.
Thank you so much, Professor Mitra. It was absolutely amazing. Of course, we have few questions which have come in already. I will request my colleague Ananya to kindly go ahead and have the questions put across to Professor Mitra.
Yeah,
Sure.
thank you, Smita. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Mitra. Only one P you have left out, and that is perfect. This was a perfect way of giving our students the knowledge on entrepreneurship. So we are really blessed by your contribution, and I have quite a few questions coming from the students. And just give me a minute. I'll just ask you one of them. It is our student Arman is asking that he is planning to start a business on a home chef module where people make food from home and sell it to the customers, and they are the goal link between the chefs and the buyers. So he just wants your viewpoint on how they can grab the market share and how to establish this idea in these competitive times.
Okay, so the home chef is a very new, interesting idea that's coming up, and I've also been reading about it. So I think it's about today, because of social distancing and all the fear about hygiene, even when restaurants are opening up, and I think we've already seen that happening. People are afraid to go on public places, right? So you would much rather that one is, of course, typical Swiggy, Zomato kind of delivery from regular restaurants or cloud kitchens. But I think what people want one of the things about great food is the experience and the knowledge that somebody's special. So I think the good thing about home chefs is the fact that I think chefs already been doing that. Chefs have the opportunity of becoming, and this already started in the West. Chefs have become what I call personal brands, right? Now, today, very often we go to a restaurant and we know the restaurant, but we don't know who the chef in that restaurant is in India. But abroad, in most of the Michelin restaurants, you go to the restaurant partly because of the restaurant, but mostly because of the fame, the name and the fame of the chef, right? And the chefs are the ones who start new restaurants. So I think because restaurant business is currently under threat and will be, I think the chefs on hire, and what the chefs have to do is probably build personal brands. Now that means three things. One is you have to probably create some content. I mean, The chefs can probably have some cookery show. And today you can have a cookery show online. You don't need to get on TV. You can do it on whatever, Instagram. You can do it on YouTube. Build a brand and then let it be also known that that chef is available to come home and cook for you, or cook for you and somebody will pick up the food and deliver, where you can, it's almost like you can have a show of value with your friends or even with your family on a special occasion.
I will join. Speak after some time, whatever you want.
Saying that, we have a special meal cooked by so-and-so chef. I think we have a great opportunity of building personal brands. So I think the first stepping stone is to build that personal brand using social media, and then use that popularity to sell that, saying that the same chef can now cook for you. So how do you use social media to build a personal brand for a home chef, and then leverage that to, create a equivalent of a catering or home delivery, or in certain cases, even the chef can come home and do the final touches in your own kitchen or whatever. So all of these models are possible. But I think the core is branding.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Mitra. And I'm sure Arman will be benefited by your answer. The second question from another student is, how do we understand the market dynamics for a startup? Because they are all just starting up and they are a bit confused. So your viewpoint, sir, on how do they understand the market dynamics?
So I call it the 4 C's. One is you have to understand your company, what is your own competence, what are you good at, what is special about you. But you also have to look at competition. You have to also look at the context. Like, for example, thanks to COVID, the whole context of the hospitality or the travel or the tourism or the F&B business has changed, right? So we also have to keep in mind what is the context. It could be health, it could be security, it could be people's concerns. But where it all boils down to, every business, where it boils down to is the final C, which is the customer. If you know your customer better than others, that is where the journey of a good business starts. Because if you know what the customer needs, or what the customer is currently not getting, or what will make the customer happier than currently whatever they are getting with, that is the start of a business idea. Because because finally the customer is going to pay you money, right? So if you find that little gap in the customer's life of saying, maybe there is a problem that the customer is facing and somebody needs to solve it, or maybe the customer is happy, but would be happier if they got something like this. And for that, you have to talk to customers, check with customers, sometimes do a small pilot, right? Where you actually start with a small prototype or a small business, check with your friends, family, some of their friends, and saying, would you try this? And give out few, things like free samples or whatever, and get the feedback. And use that feedback to fine tune it till you're ready to then launch it properly, right? So this is how every business starts, by understanding what customers need. And sometimes you have an idea, you check with customer, that's called customer validation. When you have enough confidence that, yes, I think I've got enough customers telling me, wow, this is a great idea, I'm going to pay you money and buy your product or service, that is when you're ready to go to market.
Thank you once again. Now, another question from student Arjun. Now, he is worried about how to hire suitable candidates for a startup. Means his question is, how do I motivate good people to join my startup?
Okay, 2 factors. One is, in some ways, this is the best time for startups to get people, because there are not that many jobs and there are many people who have actually been laid off. So if you want to hire people, I talked of many, many bad things that have happened, but from hiring people, this is the best time to hire people, because there are so many people who are looking for jobs. They could be fresh people, they could be people with a little bit of experience who've been laid off. But the second filter that you have to keep in mind is also that you have to make sure that they are joining for the right reason, that they are also passionate about the same purpose, they are also committed. It's not that today they just need a little bit of money and that's why they'll join you. Tomorrow they get another job, they'll run away. that's not going to help. But today, and for this, you have to use networking. So I have found, right from LinkedIn to WhatsApp groups, spreading the word. I'm looking for such and such person. Anyone interested? And sometimes it's good to try people on as freelancers or hire people on a project basis, because that way you check each other out, saying that, would you work for me for 3 months? You're currently out of a job. For example, I know a lot of college students who passed out, whose placements got deferred. They're actually trying working as interns for 3 months, 6 months. And I'm sure some of these, if it works both ways, they may actually want to join this new company. It's a great trial. It's a little like dating before deciding to get married, right? So you can work on a freelance basis. You can work on a project basis, check each other out. And then if you know that the chemistry is working and you're being productive for each other, you're good for each other, then you make it into a permanent relationship.
Wonderful. Yes, that I think absolutely answers to the point, the confusion which our student has. Last two quick questions for the day. One question is that one of our students has an idea which is a bit technology based, and it needs a huge funding actually. So the question is, should she go for incubation or should she try a angel investment, or what is your advice to her? It is a technology based product and they need a lot of funding for that.
I would say I would recommend incubation, because they are not mutually exclusive. Even if you get incubation, it does not stop you from getting angel investment. In fact, getting an incubation, and especially in a good incubator, increases dramatically your chances of getting angel funding. And I've seen this in practice many times. I'm sure it could probably happen with Sahas, but I've been associated with IIM Calcutta Innovation Park now for more than 6 years. Every time a startup has been incubated, angel investors and funders looked at them with far greater degree of seriousness for two reasons. One is they knew that if an incubator has found you good enough to be incubated, then you're probably also good enough to be funded. Number one. Number two is the fact that you know that being incubated, you're already getting support from mentors and other things. Therefore, your chances of success are higher. So as a funder, I feel more confident in putting funds behind you, because I know there is a supportive ecosystem already there to help you and guide you. And that's what an incubator does. So being part of an incubator is I would say always, of course, you need to be part of a good incubator, but being part of a good incubator actually dramatically increases both chances of success as well as chances of getting funding from whatever source.
Thank you once again. Last question for the day is that when should we take a patent for our product? Should we do it before launching the product or after launching the product?
Ideally before, because the game of patent is that it's the fastest finger first. Whoever applies for a patent and gets it, after that you cannot get a patent. So, and if you've already launched a product and somebody else sees your product and thinks it's a great idea, and if they've applied for patent even one day before you've lost the game. So if you think you have a patentable idea, the sooner the better. But you might want to, wait for that initial prototype development when you're reasonably confident. That is when you should, but definitely before launching. That's the right time to get a patent.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Mitra. That is all for now. But there are another few questions pouring in, but that would take a lot of time. So I would request that if we can send over the questions to you through your mail or some other way, and if you can give your guidance, your valuable guidance to our students.
Sure.
They are
very,
believe me, Mr. Mitra, they are so eager. Means I've been talking to all of them about their B plans, and they are just very excited and very eager. And to keep that attitude up, we really need your help and your guidance.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Over to you, Smita.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Professor Mitra. And of course, thank you for the generous offer of answering the questions after the session. I'm sure a lot of questions will be pouring in still after this. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for the very, very valuable lessons that you have taught us today. First, I will start by just remembering what you spoke. Of course, there are no golden set of rules, you said, which is absolutely sure. The case right now, there is no one size fits all situation. Everyone has to make their own plans. So thank you for that guidance. You also spoke about taking the control switch back in your own hands, which is required at this moment. You need to take control of your plans, of your future, what your thoughts are, to make sure that the journey that they are going to embark the students, that is a fruitful one. Of course, and it was a fantastic meeting with the playing 11, as you call them, starting with the purpose, prospects, products, and of course, going on to the pay-ins and payouts, to the promotion, to the tail end. Fantastic. And the reserve 4 that you spoke about. So, of course, these are the things that the students remember when you use the terminology like you did. So absolutely crystal clear. I'm sure it's embedded in their minds. The playing 11 and the reserved 4 are going to be in their mind and in their conscience for the time they start on the entrepreneurship journey. So thank you so much. Thank you for letting us know that the importance of having the ability to pivot in these times is very, very important. How to shift your focus where it's required. So we thank you for that. And as my colleague said, the only P that was left was the perfect session that you delivered for our students. And we are ever so thankful for you.
Very true.
Absolutely, Professor Mitra. And over to you, Ma'am Bose, for just, the last thank yous from your side.
Thank you. Really, we are so delighted to have you with us. And looking forward for some more sessions. Thank you so much. It was
great.
Really
I look forward to being in touch with all of you.
Yes, yes.
And have a nice weekend and all the best. I want to finally say, I know Sahas is a great initiative, so I congratulate all of you, professors and IIHM and Dr. Bose for it. But most importantly, a success of something like Sahas really depends on, a year down the line, when you look back and some of the people who are in this room as wannabe student entrepreneurs, if some of you, I'm sure you're going to face some tough times, but if some of you start having some degree of success, I think everybody in the room, including me, we would really feel happy and proud. So here's wishing all the very best to everybody, right? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Professor Mitra. Before we leave you, sir, I would just like to understand, what is that one quality that you think is an absolute must in an entrepreneur? If we just ask you to sum it down to one quality, sir.
In fact, I believe it's a combination of two qualities, right?
Sure.
And it's the balance of these two qualities. The two qualities are what I call resilience and agility, right? Resilience is about not giving up. It's about really persevering, but it cannot be pig-headed. It's not like you keep hitting your head against the wall in the same place. Agility is about knowing when to change, when to pivot, how to try something new, how to try something different. But combined with not giving up, you can't only have resilience and succeed. You can't have only agility and succeed. You need a combination of resilience and agility. And I think that are the two most fundamental defining, and the balance, the combination of these two abilities, I think, is what gives you success in almost everything, but definitely for an entrepreneur.
Fantastic. Very, very well summed, Professor Mitra. Thank you so much once again for your time. And with that, we end today's session. Please stay safe, everyone. Stay healthy. And thank you for your time. Bye-bye and have a good evening.
Bye-bye. All the best.